Yeah. So welcome to all those that are able to join us today. Really appreciate it. I know from those that have signed up, there is some people that I haven't connected with previously, maybe been sent the invite by someone that I do know. So my name's Jim Grimmer. I'm founder of a social enterprise and community interest company called P3 Business Care. It's all about work and how we manage life, basically. And my working background was 20 years as a police officer in my home city of Aberdeen and 20 years in the oil industry. And particularly during my time in the oil industry, I saw that so many situations were allowed to get to that crisis point before an employee got help. So everything was very reactive. And there was a key event really that drove me to do something. And there was a young guy, early 30s, married with 3 children, worked for one of the major oil operators in Aberdeen, and sadly at lunchtime walked away from his desk and committed suicide. And I thought, surely that shouldn't have happened. If only he had someone available in that workspace that he could have spoken to, would that have been enough to stop him doing that? So we created P3, and the P3 is simply personal proactive partnership. So we have male and female business partners that visit a company normally twice a week, developing trust and relationship with employees. So we can then proactively identify and address the issues before it gets to that crisis point. And the third P is partnership. We're working in partnership with the company, with the employees, and also with members of the family. We extend the support to immediate family. And by that, we mean parent, partner, child, because we all know if there's something going on in that space, it's ultimately impacting you at work. Got connected to Robert recently. I loved what he was doing in that business space for the last 10 years. He's been an executive coach in leadership development. He has been running a peer group in Dallas and Fort Worth for really CEO, senior management level. And I think that is so valuable. I mean, we were speaking to Thane Laurie, who's written his book, The Buddhist CEO. And that story, if you've read that book, is very much about a CEO of a company and the challenges that he's faced with in managing the organization, managing his team, etc. And I think what Robert's doing is fantastic, being able to bring that people together who know the pressures that each of them are facing, and to allow them to come together for that conversation and to get advice and experience, etc. As I've shared previously, anyone that knows me knows that I've got a Christian faith, which is one of the drivers for me to bring care to people in the business sector. Robert shares that faith as well. So a lot of things that we're sharing in common. He wants to come to Scotland in August this year, and I'm really hoping to be very supportive of him in doing that, and to host some events potentially all over Scotland for that month, because there's more than managing margin that he has to bring to us. But today's topic, when we were speaking together, it is a topic that I've had challenges with in the past. I'm sure everyone that's on this call, we know by the number of people that signed up and have asked for the recording of this meeting, that it is a challenge. How do we manage that margin? Because there's so many things that are demanding of our time that are all impacting us in some way or other. So without further ado, it's a quick 5-minute intro from me, and just want to hand across to yourself, Robert.
Fantastic. Well, I wanted everyone to meet my best friend, who's my wife, Kathy, and she's also my business partner. And she is the joy and fun in my life. And so it makes my life better just to be able to hang out with her. So I wanted to have her here to start our conversation today. I'll put my screen up here, and hopefully this works okay. Can you see the pictures?
Yep, that's okay.
Okay. All right. I'm going to run through this. Thanks, Jim, for inviting me here today. And I appreciate all you being on the call. I think Scots and Texans have a lot in common. I was thinking about that as I prepared for this call, that there's a certain kind of style in the way we roll in Texas that Scots have their own. We each have our own unique way of talking, and we're both very proud people who have a long history of fighting for our independence and for ourselves and for the rights of others. And one other thing we have in common is we don't like people to tell us what to do. I agree with that. I'm an executive coach and I don't tell people what to do. I ask them what they want to do. And then together we find out how we can work on that to get it done. And that's the approach I'm taking as I come to Scotland with my beautiful bride. We want to bring all the things that serving the business leaders here in Dallas, Texas over the last 10 years have taught us and bring it to Scotland to offer it up as something that might be of value to both to the businesses and the community leaders. God has taken me through some really challenging things in the last 10 years, and I've really learned strong concepts in the effort towards pursuing the life I really wanted, and not just the one I ended up with. And that's a phrase that I'll use a lot today. I actually challenge you to track how many times I say living the life you really want, because I can't say it enough, because I think we all kind of settle into living the life we have versus the life we want. And that's really what I'm chasing in my work with my clients. So I'm going to share my experiences in my life with as many people as I can meet with during the month of August. We're coming there to learn about Scotland. We're coming there to serve as many people and as many leaders as we can in the 30 days that we're there. So thanks for joining us today. One of the key topics I'll be bringing that day is the idea of margin. It's the idea of how to avoid overload. And our lives are very full, and we often struggle to find the time to do the things that we feel we should do, let alone the things that we really want to do. Margin helps you make better decisions, do things differently, more efficiently. You can build deeper relationships, and you can pursue the life you really want. Leaders need a way to deal with the burden of living with being the responsibility of the primary decision maker for their business. They need clarity and creativity in order to push past the challenges that come their way and to make really challenging decisions. And margin, I believe, is a tool that you can use to do that better. So I'm going to present that to you today. This is one of the sessions I'll do when I come to Scotland. I'm just going to do an overview to expose you to the concepts. Since most of you don't know who I am, I'll just take a minute to add a little bit more insight. I was in the Chess and Checkers Club in 1975. That's me with the, looks like I spilled something on my shirt, just perfect for photo day at the Chess and Checkers Club. I was on Family Feud when I was in high school. As a matter of fact, growing up in Southern California, we were on 4 different television shows. And her family was on Family Feud also, just a different time than we were. And then in 2010, we moved here to Texas. Texas is the best country in America, and we're thankful to be here. We love Texas and have thrived ever since arriving here. I have an amazing family. Of course, my beautiful wife, Kathy, that's by my side. And then our kids, Lauren, who just got married in September to Dylan. And then James, who's in his 2nd year of college and dating Sophia. Been dating her for 5 years. So I guess that'll probably be another wedding in the future. When I'm not with my family, I am leading CEO peer groups. I've been doing it since 2013, and we meet each month to work on being the best version of ourselves. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the content that we've learned and worked through and lived out through those groups and seen amazing results from it. I guess I'll just let you go.
Nice meeting you. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Cheers.
I just like having her by me. It's just nice. My clients are business owners and CEOs and other senior leaders. And in these peer groups, we meet with the mindset where we're going to be radically transparent and radically open-minded. And so today I'm going to challenge you with some things that you may not have heard before. And I want you to really take this same mindset, being radically transparent about the things that you're dealing with and radically open-minded. That allows you to get honesty with yourself and honesty with others so you can actually make changes. Now, you may not agree with what I share, and that's okay. But I encourage you to practice something we talk about, which is this idea of having 2 opposing thoughts coming together at the same time and just kind of dancing together, and to see what works out when you do that. Many people, when they hear something they don't agree with, they just shut down. They just stop listening. And then they miss something. And it's okay to have 2 opposing thoughts in your brain at the same time. It may be a little uncomfortable, but it helps you to learn. It'll help you to understand, to think differently, and to understand the way other people think differently, and then to see the world differently. So I hope you'll try that today. My approach to helping leaders is kind of like riced vegetables. Let me explain. When I was a kid, I hated vegetables. And it took me some amount of time as I graduated and became an adult to start to like vegetables again. But I still prefer a steak or a pizza or a burger, anything really, to vegetables. But there are actually some people out there who like vegetables. My wife is one of those people. One of the best things that ever happened to vegetables was this process of ricing them, where they chop them up into tiny enough pieces that I can eat it. And so I do the same thing with these ideas that I learn in my journey. Is I find something out there that I think this is really, really good for you, but it's hard to absorb. And so I process it in such a way that you can accept it. And so I'm going to do that today. And most of what I curated, most of what I share with people has been curated from other thought leaders and from processes and things that we've learned and applied in our CEO groups. And I think if you can really remain open to it, you'll enjoy the process. And a very wise man once said, there's nothing new under the sun. And I agree with that. But sometimes we just need a new shape or form in order to absorb it. And that's what we're going to do today. Let's dive into the idea of margin. This is a book written by Richard Swenson, who was a doctor for a long time, and he stepped down from his practice after years of watching his patients come in with symptoms. And as he looked at their pain, he found out that what they were dealing with was truly a lack of margin in their life. And he put them into 4 categories of time, finance, health, and emotion. And as he looked at that, he thought, this is rampant. This is everywhere. So he wrote this book. He actually wrote quite a few books. And he teaches this concept of how to deal with the underlying pains in our life by creating margin. So we have learned to live lives that exceed our personal margin so often that we no longer recognize it. We constantly push past our emotional, physical, financial, and time constraints because we don't know what margin looks like. But we've done it for so long, it just feels normal. We commit to 120% of our time, and then we wonder why we feel overloaded. It's rare that you meet someone who has their life pre-scheduled to less than 100% of their capacity, leaving for room for things to come up that are unexpected. And they do come up all the time. We've exceeded our limits so long we don't know how to pull back because our foot's stuck on the throttle. And the pursuit of progress has become limitless. And as a result, we get pulled into the pace just to maintain it. But we have limits, whether we believe it or not, and they demand our attention. Now, I'm not telling you how to live your life, how many hours to put into your work or your personal life, or what you should do with your life. I'm just showing you that there's another way to consider, and you have to make the decision. I've shared this concept with my clients. It has changed their lives. I think it has the power to do so with everyone out there. Let me start by giving you an example of how margin works. There must be an agreement that there are limits in life. I think we need to recognize that we have limits, whether we like to recognize or not, they're there. And so let's just take the category of making great decisions. How many great decisions can you make in a day? 5, 10, 30, 100, 1,000? I mean, there's got to be a limit, right? So if we can recognize that there's a limit, let's just try this one example. Play along with me. You might want to close your eyes and imagine this. You wake up tomorrow morning in your lovely, completely paid for home and get a kiss from your spouse and hugs from your kids as you casually stroll out the door for work. You get into your fully paid for new car and enjoy an easy drive down the road with no traffic to your office. And as you walk in, you see flowers from your team thanking you for being such a great leader. You sit in your comfortable chair and listen to voicemails from clients who called to say how much they love working with you. And then another one from your doctor who says your lab results came back and you're fabulous in peak health once again. You go to check your emails, but there's only 4, one of which is from the chairman of the company praising you and your team for the amazing work you did this year. And as you go into a meeting with your team, you are now ready to make some of those 23 great decisions you can make in one day. All right, open your eyes. Here's the reality. You're rudely woken up in the morning by a delivery truck backing into your mailbox again, after only getting 3 hours of sleep because your family dog is facing its last days on earth. Your spouse is still mad at you for the stupid fight you had last night, and your kids haven't been talking to you much since they got new phones. You hop in your car and you hope it starts this time, so you can rush out the door and spend time in traffic. You arrive late to the office, and everyone stands around looking at you like the mutinous crew on the Titanic. You try to have a short status meeting, but you're way behind on your key initiatives, and your phone keeps lighting up with calls from angry clients saying they're not happy about the service from your team. As you make your way down the hall to your next meeting, you look at your phone, there's 437 emails that haven't been answered for, and a text from the CFOs that says you may not make payroll again. You arrive late to your meeting with your staff who's been waiting there for half an hour. Now, make some of those 23 great decisions. Make one of those great decisions. When I talk about margin, I'm talking about the difference between your limit and your load. Take your capabilities, all you can handle, that's your limit. Then subtract the burden you carry, and whatever's left over is your margin. So if we agree there's limits and we see the load we're carrying, we can see what margin's available, how much room you have before you hit overload. Unfortunately, most people are not aware of their limits, so they press right by them. And they become overloaded, burned out, exhausted, angry, depressed, and they shut down, sometimes for a long time. Most people are used to living without margin because they don't even know what margin is, and they don't realize when it's gone. I lived that way for most of my life. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I believe it was a lack of margin. Business leaders today are overloaded. If I had to use one word to describe something I feel from all of my clients and the people I talk to, it's the word exhausted. Maybe you don't feel that way today, but many of your team does. I feel confident to state that most people are overloaded, and it's affecting your personal and professional lives. This manifests itself in the inability to focus. It builds anxiety, a loss of sleep, and if not addressed, it leads to panic and depression. Are you aware of the number of times you're approaching the threshold of your limit? Can you see areas of your life where you're currently overloaded? Do you know how this might be affecting you? Maybe you heard about the CFO of Bed Bath & Beyond last year who committed suicide. He was living in an $18,000 a month apartment, working frantically, having 18-hour days to try and turn around Bed Bath & Beyond, which was heading fast towards bankruptcy. They had a stock sale, and he was implicated in doing something that was sounding like dishonest, although he clearly did not. All that stress, though, led him to think that the only option was suicide. And I wonder what his level of overload was in that time in his life. He had a wonderful family and kids and still felt that there was no hope. It seems odd that we should be overloaded when you consider all the advances that we've made in the last 100 years. We've had more comfort and conveniences that past generations couldn't even dream about. And yet we still seem more stressed and overloaded than ever. Our cars have more features. Our paycheck is bigger. We get a couple weeks of vacation each year, and some people don't even take that. And yet we still seem so unsatisfied. We have 10 times more the material abundance than our ancestors did, but we are not 10 times more content or fulfilled. Most of the advances have been in material and cognitive environments, where most of the losses and damage has been in social, emotional, and spiritual realms. We get more stuff, we learn more stuff, but it's often at the expense of our own mind and relationship with others. We're addicted to continuously increasing more and more, and we expect that we'll have more and do more. And we know that stuff is not more important than people, but we often don't live like it. Margin helps us be productive at work, creates better relationships, deeper relationships, improves your health of your mind and your body and your soul. It makes sense to create margin in life, room to deal with the unexpected, but most don't do it. Occasionally you might say, I think I'm getting close to hitting my limit or maxing out. But by the time you feel that, you probably already passed it. It's like when you feel thirsty, but because your body's dehydrated. If you wait too long, you can get sick. Margin's the same way. You might appear to be physically or emotionally. It might appear that you're okay physically or emotionally, but you've exceeded your limit long before you recognize it. And living life this way can drastically affect your performance at work and cause irrevocable damage to those closest to us before we realize that we've exceeded our limits. Margin is required to make some room to perform with excellence and still have the capacity to respond to changes that come our way. Like this slide shows, most people live with very little margin in most areas of their life. And one at a time, we might be able to handle exceeding some of these limits from one at a time, but they usually seem to stack up all at once because there's a ripple effect I'll show you in a minute. And they have an effect on each other. And all three of them affect the emotional energy. And if you don't maintain a healthy level of emotional energy, you are in dangerous waters. Most people I know live in a world that exceeds their limits, and they've done it for so long, they just don't even recognize it anymore. Most leaders put more time into their work at the expense of their family, friends, sleep, rest. They have no margin. We think it's no big deal, but it's affecting us, and it's reducing our performance at work and the joy that we could experience in life. Most people have less in their bank account and more on their credit cards than they should. That's no margin. Most leaders carry the burden of their employees, their customers, their investors, and other stakeholders to bed with them every night. That's no margin. Creating margin in your life is essential to living the life you really want. Again, I'm not telling you to work less hours or make less money or eat healthier food. I'm just saying stay radically open-minded as I present this to you, and then you decide what you want to do. You know, I get amazing clarity in the shower. Why do you think that is?
Mhm.
It's because I have nothing else to do except take a shower. When you have nothing else distracting you and nothing else chasing you down and nothing else you can do, you can get a lot of clarity. Matter of fact, I keep a dry erase pen in the shower. And so I write on the glass wall ideas that come to me, because they always come to me. Oh, I got to call Jim. Oh, send that file or whatever. Because usually by the time I get out and dry off, I forgot what it was I thought of. So writing it on the glass wall has helped me. My mind is free to be focused on anything. It's clear, it's creative. We need room to think. We make better decisions that way. Margin helps with that. In my conversation with business owners in Dallas, I see how most of them are living in overload in one area or another. And they do too much, they work too many hours, and they feel the load of it on their shoulders. And due to the incredible amount of things we feel we should get done, we try to work 3 or 4 things all at the same time. Multitasking just means doing a few things poorly all at the same time. Multitasking, I think, should be limited to computers. That's where the phrase came from. They don't have any emotional side. Now, before you get defensive and tell me what a great multitasker you are, remember to be radically open-minded here. Do the dance. Many people think they're good multitaskers because they pull it off all the time, but they don't compare the quality of the work that they could have done if they did it one at a time, or the quality of the decision you made, or the mental drain it puts on you, or the effect it has on the next task that you tackle, or how long it really takes to do one thing at a time versus 3 or 4 at a time. Dr. Swenson compares in his book this mindset of what our brains can cause to us emotionally when we run overload by a study that was done where people were asked to calculate or subtract 7 from 777 backwards. And the stress it caused to their body was more than running hard for a few minutes. The effects of overload are there, we just don't always see them. Here are some of the types of the overload that Dr. Swenson mentions in his book. I'm sure you've seen these at one time or another. Our calendars are booked up weeks in advance. There are way too many choices, from the number of cereal boxes to the cable channels available to the brand of whiskeys at the bar. We overcommit. People just can't say no these days. They sign up their kids for too many sports at the same time, enroll in multiple courses while holding down multiple jobs and volunteering for multiple opportunities. Can you relate to some of these? There are many kinds of overload we can mention in the book, but let me remind you, as a wise man once said, that there's more to life than just being busy. So what do people get for this life, for all their hard work and anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief. Even at night, their minds cannot rest. It's all meaningless. So I decided there's nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and find satisfaction in work. And then I realized that these pleasures were from the hand of God. My desire for you today is enjoy the life that God's given you by creating margin and avoiding overload. Margin to enjoy the simple things in life, like working and food and friendship and to drink with a friend. I believe you'll be more productive and more satisfied if you can embrace margin. Let me be clear, load is not the enemy. It's overload that's the enemy. I am a pro-load person. I love a challenge. I do a lot. I keep busy. I rarely rest. And I too struggle to avoid overload in my life. And you might say, I obviously have not exceeded my limits since I'm still functioning, right? Maybe. But you could be one straw away from breaking the camel's back and you don't know it. There's a limit to where we stop being productive and we start wearing ourselves down. Look at this chart. As your productivity goes up, so does your stress. And at some point you reach peak performance. That's A, that's where you want to stop. But if we continue to go past that, we go to B, which is fatigue. More stress than the productivity actually goes down. And if we continue to do that, we face critical burnout and exhaustion. Now, there's no alarm that goes off as you're moving along that spectrum. And so since we've not practiced the art of creating margin, we don't know when we hit that peak performance level and stop. It'd be like saying, hey, that was a good day at work. That was productive. I'm going to go home and play with my kid. Those are choices we just don't make enough. I'm not telling you to work less hours. I'm pointing out that there are limits and that you can't be as productive if you go past them. You're looking at your ROI or maybe your ROT, return on time, and it starts to drop and heads towards exhaustion. Why would you keep working? Invest that time into something else that could be productive. The idea of limits is hard for us to accept. So we feel not. Your clock has limits, even if your impatience does not. And your calendar has limits, even if your worry does not. And if you live in the zone past optimal performance, you are wasting your effort when you could be.
Robert, frozen, or is that just my screen?
Oh, am I frozen?
Yeah, you were just froze up just for a few seconds each. Okay.
Am I back?
Yeah, I've got you back. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I didn't change the slide, so it wasn't that bad.
No, you're frozen again.
Agree, Jim, you're not alone.
You're frozen again, Robert.
Yeah. Huh.
Okay, that's you back.
Wow, that's really odd. I never have internet troubles. I'm sorry, folks.
No worries.
Look
It
at
happens.
some of these limits that we have on this screen. How many angry people can I deal with in 1 week? Number of clients and customers I can serve in a week. There are definitely limits. I think we understand the idea of limits, but we don't live like it. Like, you should have 8 hours of sleep, but do you live like that? Margin helps you recognize that there are limits and then help you thrive underneath them. So are there any areas in your life where you've created a healthy margin today? The simplest example could be your finances. If you spend less than you earn and you save for emergencies and you follow a budget and you spend wisely and you give graciously to others, you might say you have healthy margin in your finances. What areas do you feel like you need more margin, or are you just willing to continue to live without it? Making one bad decision during a time of overload can be detrimental to your life, your company, and certainly to your relationships. But since most people don't know they've exceeded their limits, they continue to make choices when they're not on top of their game. For example, we deceive ourselves if we say we can still perform our work responsibilities with excellence when we show up at work having only had 5 hours of sleep, a stressful marriage, problem with the kids, and looming debt. You might be able to physically walk in the office and get things done, but you are not on top of your game. And in most cases, you're only moments away from a hard crash. I know because I've seen it a bunch of times. The only way to avoid all this is to establish margin in your life. So we need to develop a mindset that there are limits in life, and then we need to act like it. And we also need to recognize that no matter how hard you try, you will never get it all done. So in order to live the life you really want, you need to create margin. And what that looks like is up to you, but something needs to be done. Dr. Swenson presents 4 categories. And that's the part that I'll dive into in depth during my presentation is addressing these 4 areas: time, finance, physical energy, and emotional energy. There's other areas we could focus on, but these, well, if you get a grip on these, you're doing great. Time, for example, we can measure. You can look at your calendar and say, well, how much time have I left for things that I don't plan for? People who book meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting are setting themselves up to crash and burn or make mistakes or run late, because no matter what you do, when you walk out of the office, someone says, hey, can I just have 5 minutes with you? It's really important. Or a customer will call, or something will happen, or your family calls, and you have set yourself up to fail when you pack yourself in with your calendar. And if you're not controlling that, it controls you. There's only 24 hours in the day. You can't get any more. And so you just need to go back and look and see what is the thing that's most important and allocate according to be chasing the things that you want. That you can measure, that you can make changes in pretty easily. Finances is something else we can measure. Unlike 24 hours a day, we can actually cheat finances and get more money. We can go into debt. I did that. My wife and I, part of our journey is we had horrible debt, and it was debilitating. And we made really bad decisions and we had to live with it, but it was always haunting me. And so people spend more than they earn, are putting themselves with no margin. If something breaks down or someone has an issue, you're in trouble, and that weighs heavy on you, and that creates stress and anxiety. But we can measure that and we can do something about it. Health is harder to measure, but it can be. Like I can get a feel for what my health is like by what I weigh, what my blood pressure is, what the lab results came back as, what do I weigh, how many hours of sleep did I get, how much do I eat, how many hours do I exercise, etc. So I can do things I can measure with an outcome in mind. So I can measure a lot of that. What I can't measure at all is emotional health. It's the unknown. It's the thing that I can't measure because I don't know what I'm like. I leave for work, I'm having a great morning, and someone cuts me off, and next thing I'm honking my horn and screaming at them. Where did that come from? I thought it was a great way. I thought I was having a wonderful day. Well, clearly I didn't have enough emotional margin that I go nuts just because someone cuts me off on the road. And we're not aware that we've lived our lives so overloaded that we depleted our emotional tank. So the simplest thing can set us off. And the truth is, all 3 of those areas suck out the value and energy in your emotions. And since you can't know how much your emotional tank has got, you have to work hard to defend it. You've got to do things in the time, finances, and health to protect the emotional bank and keep it as full as you can, so that as you're having stresses come in your life, you can handle them. Think about the people on your team and the people in your life. If they could find more satisfaction in life by making better choices and creating margin, how will they perform at work? How will your relationships be? Leaders need to care for them first before you can effectively care for your team and bring the best version of you and them to your work life and your personal life. So this is a brief overview of the workshop I'll do in margin that I'll be sharing with companies in August. I believe there's an awful lot of businesses out there that would benefit from this mindset. They want to build teams that are committed and engaged and loyal and hardworking. You have to pour into them as human beings first. You have to care for them so that they can bring their A game to work. This is a 4-hour workshop, but I'm just giving you a quick overview to principles of it. One other thing I'll add as I wrap up my presentation is my faith in Jesus Christ is a big deal to me. Margin creates room in my life for God. I want to be available when God brings someone in my life that he wants me to spend time with. If my life is so overloaded that there's no room for God, I miss out on the great things that he's planned for me. If I overextend myself, I become overloaded. And then I can't do anything. I have no time for the things that he wants me to do. And if I don't create margin in my finances, I have no money to give graciously when he brings someone in my life that he wants to use his money to bless. Now, remember, I'm an executive coach, so I don't tell you how to run your life or your business or your health or your time or your finances. And I'm not telling you how to live out your faith or your lack thereof. But I am reminding you that faith is an important part of what makes you a whole person. So don't ignore that. As a follower of Jesus Christ, I find guidance from the Bible that tells me how to view my life, my finances, my body, and it gives me peace that keeps my emotional energy tank full. Ignoring your faith makes a hole in your life that nothing will ever fill. So let faith be part of your journey and find that it fuels all the other areas of your life. And don't feel guilty to pursue the faith you really want. It's your life. When we live intentionally, we have more satisfaction and more joy, and we can bring the best of ourselves to the world each day. I'll end my overview by sharing one other passion I have, and that's the idea of personal accountability. In order to live the life you really want, you need to stop making excuses or blaming other people, and you just need to own it. This book will show you how. My friend Salem Thine and I wrote this book. You can buy it on Amazon or at nobodycaresbook.com. I'll be offering workshops on this during my time in Scotland also. And I'll present it on our next call on March 8th. Jim's going to send you an email where I can get you a link to attend that again. And you can invite other people, other business owners, other leaders who need to understand, as you're creating margin in your life, you're freeing yourself up to have a vision of your life of what you really want. And once you know what you really want, you've got to stop making excuses for why you're not living the life you want. And that's where accountability comes in, personal accountability. So I'll share that in my next call. I'd love to hear some feedback from y'all about how this session went, how you receive it, if it makes sense. Love to get some questions answered if we have time, Jim.
Yeah. You want to stop sharing your screen?
Yep.
Just a sec, and that'll take us back into it. Yeah. Thanks, Robert. Yeah, we do have one question. Mark was asking. It's Harvard states that we can't multitask, rather we task switch, and thus reduce the impact on all the things we're trying to juggle. And interestingly, I was speaking to a psychologist friend of mine recently. We were having this conversation about your to-do list. And he used to operate a to-do list, he said, but more recently, he'd started to put particular tasks into his diary. And I've started to try and do that, and I do find it's been helpful. Put your thoughts on that, and because you know what it's like in business. I mean, especially when you're a business owner, you're trying to manage sales, finance, people, clients. You know, there's a whole list of things that are coming at you, creating these tasks in effect. So what's your thoughts on that?
We talk about it in our CEO groups that there's a drop-off effect every time you stop your focus and come back to it. So the idea of multitasking, where I put a little attention here and a little attention here, and a little attention here, and I come back to them back and forth. If you could imagine, I'm working on something, I'm getting clarity, I'm creating something, I'm documenting, I'm working on, and then someone interrupts and I deal with their stuff. When I want to go back to where I was, it takes me all this time to get back up to where I was on my trajectory. So this is the loss in productivity. And we encourage them to take focus days each month. Some of my clients take a focus day every week, and they go somewhere out from the office, they work remotely, or they go to a different place, and they will use that as a day of focus. Then they'll come back in the next day, they'll have a push day, and they preset meetings with their team. They'll schedule things and say, I want to work on this initiative. You know, we always talk about you should be working on the business and not in the business. And that's encouraging that behavior by having the discipline of going away, thinking about, what do I want to get done? Where are we not moving the needle? What's lagging behind? And then you come back to your team with clarity. You're not distracted. You're not in the office with the door closed. The closed door just means they have to knock instead of walking in. It doesn't actually give you the chance to really think and have room to process things creatively. So we encourage them to have a focus day and a push day, and stay away from multitasking.
And how often in reality can you free up that focus day? I mean, I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, there's projects that I have on my plate at the moment that I think I need to take a day, just even to go away, as you suggest, to be able to get clarity and focus on that. But I'm finding that increasingly difficult. Although I know, and some of these things are working to deadlines, so you've got to find that space ultimately. Right. Yeah.
Well, when you create margin, you'll have more room to do the things that you want to do. And you have to adjust. Part of what I do in my presentation is the concept of excellence. And excellence requires that nothing be above the zero line. Nothing can be below zero line and say you have excellence in your life. So if your business is just cranking and you're doing fantastic, but your health is below the zero line, it's not excellence. And if you're making a lot of money, but your marriage is below the zero line, it's not excellence in your life. And so you might choose to slow down some of the top line revenue to be able to build more unity in your team and be able to scale effectively and more profitably the next year. You might choose to say, I'm going to take a little bit more time to enjoy my marriage and my family. It's not work-life balance. That never works. It's margin. It's saying that I'm going to choose to have the results I want as long as everything's above the zero line. So I keep every Friday devoted to content creation and development of me. And Monday's our team day. That means I have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to get stuff done. So if I can't do the things I want to get done on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I need to hire people, delegate, or I need to say, that's not my goal. And of course, when there's a deadline like this call, I had to be prepared for it. But you get to decide what your life and your business looks like. It's your life. It's your business. You shouldn't have a deadline that you don't like because you set it.
Okay, it's a good question. Ennis was saying you probably answered it to a degree there. How much margin is enough, a little or a lot? But I suppose it's making sure you have margin, whatever that looks or however much is needed for that particular area.
Well, each person will decide how much margin they want in each category of their life. It's your personal decision, but I just challenge you to have some. And when you have some and you see what it feels like and you see what it does, you might say, I want a little bit more. Some people's world is more volatile. Depends on the business, depends on your family life. If you got young kids, you know, your plan was to go to work and do this, and all of a sudden one of them got the flu and you got to stay home, or you got to go to the school to pick them up. Or if you've got multiple businesses with multiple locations and lots of employees, the odds of you having things you didn't plan for are going to come up a lot. So what you decide that you want to create margin in time and finances. For example, I reduced my finances, my margin in finances went down this year to hire an employee. And that was important to me because I wanted to have more time. So I'm taking the margin of my money where I had more room to have things go bad, and I shortened it up a little bit to put that money over here to hire an employee, which gave me more time. And with more time, I have the ability and the creativity to do the things I really want to do in driving my business and having the marriage I want and enjoying my life. And if you can just move the margin from one to the other, they have a ripple effect. We dive into that in detail and creating tools and processes to create margin in our presentation. But if I take some of my margin money, financial margin, and I allocate it to time, I will free up, which will help my health be better because I won't be working late at night trying to get things done until the wee hours of the night. I can get a full 8 hours of sleep and actually go to the gym in the morning and actually enjoy my life more.
Okay, very good. It's another good question. In a world where as business owners, you're on call what feels like 24/7, what is the one piece of advice you give to start to create margin? How do
You just gotta, yeah, you got to come to the reality that nobody owns your soul. You shouldn't be on call 24/7. If you're on call 24/7, you have not built a team that's owning the job. The goal of a business owner is to create a team that is fully engaged, sees your vision, is passionate like you are, and does the work for you. And if it is that you have to be on 24-hour call, you're doing it wrong. Now, some people would say, well, I'm not the owner of the company. I don't have that luxury. Okay, well, an employee should not be on call 24/7, unless they're like a doctor where they are on 24/7. I get that. But in most cases, we feel this burden to try and be available constantly, but all you're doing is burning out your good employees, and they're not coming to work fully engaged because they're exhausted. I have construction clients who they pour concrete and they have to be there when the shift is laying out the forms at a certain time of night. Then they sleep in their truck for 3 hours so they can be there when the concrete pours up, and then they work the day. And that's not wise. They're not making good decisions. They're screaming at contractors. They're making bad decisions when their customer shows up. They're not talking to them nice because they slept in their truck. And so this kind of mindset that we force ourselves to have, it's self-inflicted in most cases. But you are able to make a decision as to how you want to live your life, how you want to run your business. If you work for a company that demands that you live your life for them, go somewhere else. And if you run a company that has to have you there constantly, you've not built a team. You're still the most important person in the company. It's worthless. Someday when you want to sell it and you're the most important person, no one's going to buy it because when you leave, what do they have? You're actually helping your business be more valuable by building your team and empowering them and creating a system where they own it, which gives you the life you want before you retire. I've had clients who said, man, when I'm going to build this business and then I'm going to sell it, I'm going to retire, and they die. And they never got a chance to do that. So they live their whole life thinking someday I'm going to have this, and it never comes. Don't wait.
No, very good. Another one, does emotional margin come from having margin in the other areas or other tools that we can implement to create emotional margin?
Yeah, Dr. Swenson has some really good suggestions, and I've seen a lot of things in my own life and in my client's life that we talk about in the full presentation. But yes, starting with you being whole as a person and letting yourself be the person you want to be, that builds peace, and you are building rest. The three categories feed into emotional energy, but since you don't know what its level is, you have to just assume you're going to pour more and more into there, and they feed into the emotional energy. But there's lots of things you can do, like resting. Sometimes I put on a comedy tape while I'm driving somewhere and just listen to not Tim Allen, that's a long time ago. Listen to some comedy tape and have some laughter. You could do simple things like box breathing. It's the Navy SEALs have talked about box breathing to calm yourself down in times of combat. Thane would have a lot of ideas of how you can center yourself and to be quiet and be still. There's great tools out there. We just have to take advantage of them, and settling down and having a pint with a friend at the end of the day, not 12 pints, but a pint with a friend, is very relaxing and brings joy and fun. Sitting in your home with your family, tucking your kids into bed. My wife and I have a rule. We go to bed every night together. That's our rule. And she puts her head on my chest and I give her a hug. And it's not about sex. It's about having my beautiful wife beside me. It gives me calm. And even though she might get back up a half an hour later and go do something else, that I get to be with her, it brings joy to my life. We put some rules in our world that help feed my soul, and that pours back into my emotional bucket. So there's lots of tools. I think if you sat and just thought of a few things that give you joy and make you laugh, and you did those intentionally, you'd find your emotional bucket was a lot fuller.
Yeah, very good. I suppose, I mean, we speak about boundaries, and that's one of the key things of putting that in place. Similar way to create that margin, I suppose. Yeah.
Explain that a little better.
Well, if you put boundaries in, so you say, okay, I am only going to work, instead of the 12 hours that I've been working, I'm only going to work 8 hours. That kind of thing. Or I am going to finish at 5 and I'm going to play golf with the guys at whatever.
The problem with boundaries is they're pretty arbitrary and they're hard to keep. And then we feel bad when we break them. And then a lot of times you ebb and flow. I'm going to get up at 5 every morning and go to the gym. And then I'm going to go to bed at 9 o'clock sharp. And, I'm only going to work till 5 o'clock. And, these boundaries, they are pretty arbitrary. And then the guilt factor kind of pulls out of the emotional bucket whenever you break those boundaries. What I think is, instead of setting a boundary, is to say, let's look at every day as, what is it I want my life to look like today? When we work with our clients, we say, let's start with the end in mind and let's work backwards. So someday you want to sell your business, but when you sold it, what do you want your life to look like at that point? And we look at their personal life as much as their business, because if by the time you sold the business, you've lost your marriage and your kids aren't talking to you, what's the point? And so we look at this and say, so here's what I want my business to look like. Okay, we do these steps to get starting here. This is what we do to get that goal. Same thing with your personal life. When I'm old, I want my kids to take care of me, not to be mad at me because I wasn't there for me, and not take me to the doctors and not come visit me in my home. I want that. And I want to grow old with my beautiful bride, and I want to enjoy things now. And so I'm doing decisions based on what I want the outcome and working back. And I think that's, to me, is more rewarding than trying to set some kind of boundaries somewhere.
Very good. Okay, any other questions? There's no more questions in the chat. I was asking guys to put in the chat.
I'd love to hear from some people how my words connected, because I just assume, since everybody speaks English, that the words I say mean the same thing that I meant them to say. But as we always talk about, communication is not what is said, it's what's understood. And so I meant to share with you this principles of margin, but if it came across a certain way, I'd love for you to tell me how you received it, what you thought about it. Out loud.
I'll speak a moment. Some of the stuff I learned a few years ago from listening to a series by Andy Stanley, and I think he's coming from a similar place, and obviously a shared faith that we have, Robert and Jim. And yeah, but this has been a really good refresher for me to just remind myself of this, because you can set some good patterns in place, and I have benefited from having some good margins in my life, but then they just start to erode. Something comes along, and for me it's been a bit of a change in how I interact with my clients since lockdown, and there've been all sorts of extra opportunities to give away my margin, and it's actually like maintaining the dike wall against the sea. You've got to you can't just assume that you've got it cracked from the start. So, but yeah, very much in tune with what you're saying here. It's been excellent.
I like Andy Stanley's book, Choosing to Cheat. Have you ever read that one?
I haven't.
It's an old book, but it's just about either you cheat your business or you cheat your family, but you're cheating somewhere. And it's about making really intentional decisions about your life. And that's really what was one of my catalysts for building the life that I really wanted. So I would encourage you to look for that book. It's a little book, a little tiny one. And
Yeah.
it's
It's there. How
Yeah.
cool's that? Yeah.
I recommend it.
His podcast series on teaches sermons on guardrails was kind of aligned to that, and that's what set me off as well. So yeah, that's so cool that you had that in the background.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. Anybody else got guidance or feedback from how you received the concept today?
Hi, Robert. It's Ken. I appreciate things you've been saying. I think one of the things that you can always tell when somebody's stressed, the term that they've got a short fuse. That they can't cope with the challenges or pushback that they may get in the workplace. So I can understand the margin just gives you that. It gives you a longer fuse before things kind of get too much. For me, trying to work out what is the things to say no to. There's so many demands. People want your time, and I get frustrated when people pinch your time. They book a meeting without kind of engaging with you, the necessity for that meeting. And probably one of my biggest bugbears is people asking to fill in surveys. But in terms of particularly institute directors and others, businesses that are many of you, they're trying to helping you, but are actually looking for you to complete a survey, which there's a place for that. But
yeah. Thane, you were going to say something. I think you stopped when Ken jumped on.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much for your presentation, Robert, and thank you, Jim, for organising this. I thought your presentation was excellent, and it made a lot of sense to me. If you're wondering if it, the US-based person, and it makes sense to the UK audience, I certainly felt that it did. I thought one of the things that I thought was interesting about your 4 margins in particular was emotions. And I think that's something that doesn't crop up necessarily that much in leadership circles, but I certainly, it's something I've been thinking about over the last couple of years, emotions. And certainly I think I'm not working as a CEO at the moment, but in hindsight, I wonder if there's so many pressures and so many things come your way, if emotions could be damped down, you're not aware of doing it. And I read a famous book called The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Van der Kolk, a Harvard doctor. And it's amazing how he says your body keeps the score. You repress these emotions, and maybe some impact on my life that in hindsight. But it was interesting you touched upon emotions. I think it's often overlooked in leaders and how much they can be repressing their emotions because they're just dealing with so much. It's just almost too much. You deal with things calmly. I thought I was dealing with things calmly, but somewhere my body was keeping the score. These emotions are being stored somewhere and having a negative effect, I believe. So, but no, I thought it was interesting and I enjoyed the whole presentation. So thanks.
Good. Yeah, we don't talk about it in work enough, but all the issues that I see that are big issues are people issues. It's not like we decided to go to the wrong market or, hey, all of a sudden our product was all bad. The reason the product might be bad is because our team lost their focus and they're they're not keeping up with their roles and responsibilities and the quality fails. But that's people driven, not machines. We run the machines. If we're not watching machines because we're not doing our job, then the machines break down, but it's still people oriented. If you want to have the business you really want, you have got to learn to optimize your people. People are what make business work. And you have people that create processes and systems and people that engage each other and people that help each other. But if we're not focused on the emotional side of our people, we're not helping them bring their A game to work every day, and our business is suffering.
Yeah. All right. I'm conscious of the time, guys, because I always like to stick to time. I appreciate life is busy for you. So that's 5 o'clock. As Robert mentioned, we're going to run another meeting again next Wednesday, the 8th of March at 4 p.m. And as he said, that will give him a chance to share more about his book, Nobody Cares, and accountability, which is another very important topic. So thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. As I say, being recorded as well, so I'll share that with those that have asked for the recording. But and thanks for your very positive feedback on some of the chat. There's been some great comments and feedback on that as well. But enjoy your evening, and we'll hopefully see you again next week. And thanks very much.